Welcome back, baseball fans. The 1974-77 off-season transactions, part one. This is the starting point you're looking at. I'll hide this on the board for a little bit. It's where if you watch the most recent video, it's where we set everything up to get to a starting point. And tonight we're going to look at the first 8 teams in their quest to get down to close to the proper number of players to keep, waive, and retire, which should be 40202. So with that, I'm going to fade it into where we're at now because I've done some work, and here we are. I'm picking this up here now. We are down to just 17 overages, keepers, and a shortage of 10 waivers and 10 retirees now. And the first 8 teams have made moves. The teams aren't complete, though what's interesting is that they all have at least the 4 guys they want to keep now. There have been some transactions involved as well. There have been tokens used as well. Some teams made tokens and some people spent. So we'll see how that worked for the first 8 teams here. Beginning with the Kansas City Royals. So in this column, this is where our season ended, and this will be a constant. That will not change. And over here is where their current outlook is. So Kansas City, if they didn't do anything else, they could go right into the draft. They got to the 40202. So how did they do that? They started at 50102. They had Lou Piniella in the trade block. They had Fran Healy and Cookie Rojas as somebody has to go on the keeper list. Let's go see what Kansas City did. We have the constant rosters from a year ago. And then these right now in flux. There's a lot of players moving along, and so that's what I like to do. I keep one as a constant and one as a variable. So the first thing Kansas City did was a trade with the Yankees, and this was interesting in its simplicity. Kansas City traded Lou Piniella's 74 card to the Yankees for Elliot Maddox's 74 card. Both of these cards actually were Yankee players. Elliot Maddox was in the top 10 voting in 74. He's the 3rd best hitter on the team. Piniella was the 2nd best hitter on the team. No net tokens involved. No other players involved. It's simple. And though this is one of those trades where it's who's ahead in the beginning, who's ahead in the end. On the short term, Kansas City gets a better player. You get a 1 with -3 arm in the outfield. In Maddox, you can play center field and right field. But Piniella will continue a longer and more productive career with the Yankees by the time the Bronx Zoo arrives, 77, 78, 79. So that's kind of how we do it sometimes when we're making trades where we know the ultimate results. Trying to match up the actual trades that occur doesn't make a lot of sense when there's a lot of lopsided trades in the sport. In this particular case, there was no money involved. The Royals were ticked with the Yankees, saying, you should give us a token. And the Yankees said, no, you're getting a top 10 MVP player. Just be happy and blah, 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 yada, yada. And Kansas City responded, yeah, but you're going to upgrade Lou Piniella to his 330 card in 1977. And the Yankees would possibly have to use a token to do that anyway. So that's all right. Kansas City likes the improved player in the short term. The other move Kansas City made is that they decided that there really is no practical value for Fran Healy. He's just another catcher in the league, nothing special about him. So they move him off the keeper list onto the waiver list because John Wathan will be arriving in 1977 with a heck of a card, and they're going to be happy to have that. So that's sort of what the Royals have done. I mean, they're going to have a 300 hitting catcher. They're going to have a 1 with a -3 arm joining Amos Otis in the outfield, by the way, and Al Cowens. That's a great outfield defense for the Kansas City Royals. With those moves, the Royals are going to hit pause on the carousel. Next up, the Florida Marlins. They started at 30104. 4 retired guys. That is probably the worst lot. No, Colorado has 5 retired guys. Yeah, that's just nothing, as valueless. So they have to unload some of those. They actually also are ready to draft, and it was really just one transaction with the Florida Marlins. Take a look at this trade here. One big trade with the Yankees did everything Florida needed to do. So they traded the Ed Figueroa card of 76, their 7th round pick. 7th round picks are always in the year of 1974. Retired players Chuck Goggin and Orlando Pena to the Yankees for the Yankees' 1st round pick designated to the year of 76 to match Figueroa's year. Florida in the 1st round, they'll still have their 1st round pick, and they're going to take Manny Mota in 77. They also get 1974 Marv Lane, a defensive left fielder, and that's what Florida is going to need for Manny Mota. Manny Mota, the Mota rules state that he cannot play a full game, and so he would be the defensive replacement for Mota, playing every day. Also, Mel Stottlemyre is on waivers as he's not very good anymore, but he's better than a retired player, so he goes to Florida. And an active keeper, Fred Kendall, joining Ellie Rodriguez as a keeper and a draft token. So Florida got a lot in this. They get a draft token. Sure, they lose Ed Figueroa. They get a 1st round pick. They have the rights to Fred Kendall now. And now when you look at the Marlins, here's the Marlins offseason. It's, as you can see, it's all players are deleted, players are added. Marv Lane could actually even go in this offensive spot up here. We can do this right now. He's fun making these little moves. And 40202. So Melendez and Millan. The other idea was, what could we get for Felix Millan? Well, here's the thing. I guess the market cooled for Millan with the Braves and the Mets because the asking price was too much for a second baseman. It's like 280, 290. Slick fielder, but he doesn't have much power. And the Mets had Terry. They were happy with Terry Harmon, and the Braves are going to be happy to move Marty Perez from shortstop to second base. So the division rivals weren't going to cave and give Florida a lot for Millan. So the best thing to do is keep your good player, and Florida will keep Millan, so we can erase that. So it looks like Mota and Millan, and now Fred Kendall will be a second catcher with Ellie Rodriguez on this team. And that was the extent of Florida's offseason so far. Next up, the Cubs. They had a 5th keeper. They also have Fergie Jenkins on the roster. And they were on the phone with the Rangers. And this thing went back and forth quite a bit with the Texas Rangers till they finally settled in a transaction. This is a good one. This is a really interesting trade with a lot of... So Fergie Jenkins does go to the Rangers. The Cubs get 2 tokens. That's what you get for a Hall of Famer if you don't get a comparable Hall of Famer in return. 2 tokens for Fergie. They also unloaded Paul Povich, a utility infielder, on the Rangers. And the rights to Del Unser is actually pretty good, but he's not really associated with the Cubs. He goes to the Rangers. The Cubs get Dave Rader, 74 card. It's a 291 hitting catcher. They already have Tim Hosley. One can be the DH, one could be the catcher. Rader can be an everyday player. He can be a DH catcher versus righties and same against the lefties. Hosley's better against righties.
They get Joe LaHood, a corner outfielder who could probably play left field better defensively than Billy Williams, who might be moving to either DH or a first base platoon with Andre Thornton. And the Cubs also get the rights to Bill Hands back, though he'll go on waivers. So it was a nice get for both teams. Texas had to have Fergie Jenkins. They had nobody pitching on 3 days rest. So when that transaction is done, the Cubs sit with 4 keepers, 4 waivered players, but they're not going to get anything for waivered players. They'll have to send 2 to the retirement list through trades or transaction that way. The Rangers down here started at 60101, but because they got rid of Bill Hands and they let's take a look at the Rangers for a second. So the Rangers, Burrows, Grieve, Unser, Nelson, and Bibby. So Bill Hands is gone. David Clyde is also moved to waivers. So that was the other move. David Clyde was a keeper. He's now on waivers. As you know, we know Clyde pitches for the Rangers, but look, not every guy who pitches for a team gets to play for that team. And Clyde played for him last year. He's just not an effective enough pitcher for the league. Plain and simple. So he's not really worth the time and trouble for the Texas Rangers right now. All right, next up, Seattle. This is a team that wants anything they can get. They start at 30203, and they finish at 40103. This was with one nice little trade with the Twins. Nice little haul for the Twins in this one. Both teams made out, really. Seattle and the Twins. So Seattle needed bodies. Twins were always looking for left-handed pitching because they struggled with that a year ago. And they also wanted one of their own players back. So Seattle sends Glenn Adams' 75 card. It's arguably one of the better active cards on Seattle that has value. So they sent it to the team who he played for. Actually played for the Giants in 75, but then he played for the Twins. So eventually at 338 for the Twins. He's still hitting 300 with this card. This is the guy the Twins really wanted, the 1974 Rich Folkers, full-time lefty setup guy, a lefty who's better against righties. And Seattle had only one pitcher. They have 7 active pitchers, and only Tom Bradley was put on waivers. So they get their 8th active pitcher, Bill Singer, in this deal. The Twins didn't want Bill Singer anymore. He didn't have a good year this past year, and they have a lot of righties. They have Blylev and Goltz. They have Jim Hughes in the farm system. They might end up getting Joe Decker back. Right-handed pitching is not much of an issue for them. They unloaded Vic Albury, who they needed an upgrade for, and Folkers is certainly that. And they let Chico Cardenas go away. He actually was playing for the Texas Rangers in 74. He's just a shortstop versus lefties. He didn't bring a lot of value, even though his card hits pretty well. Seattle does get a token in this, as the best players are going to Minnesota and the weaker players are going to Seattle. So it's interesting for Seattle. Their pitching staff is actually set, believe it or not. Their offense is not very good. So Seattle, once they add Bill Singer to their roster, check this Seattle pitching staff out. Bill Singer, Ross Grimsley, Steve Busby, and the number 4 guy is either Vic Albury or Glenn Abbott. The long man is a really good Stan Thomas. Skip Pitlock goes to lefty setup, and Skip Lockwood's the closer. Boom. All those cards are presently on Seattle. That means all 8 rounds of the draft, Seattle can concentrate on offense, offense, offense. And frankly, Seattle should be offense. During their expansion, they often hit better than they pitched. Before they're, at this point at least, they're pitching better than they're hitting. I like what Seattle did there. They took a strength and made it stronger, and now they can concentrate on their weaknesses throughout the draft. Vegas would spend some money. Makes sense. Las Vegas, right? They started 50201. They went 40301. They wanted this Bavacqua card as a guy assigned to them in an expansion into the 77 expansion draft. Though Milwaukee had the rights to him, so they would have to pry him off of the Brewers. So they did. In one simple transaction, they sent a waivered player, Ken Berry, for the Bavacqua card that hits 333 with power both ways in an outlier year, but it's a 4-year contract. So that's going to cost you 2 tokens because it's a completely imbalanced trade. You're giving up a 333 hitter and getting nothing in return. Bavacqua is one of the 3 cards in 1977 that have special rules applied. Manny Mota, Roger Freed, and Kurt Bavacqua have special rules about how much you can play these guys. And in all cases, Bavacqua does not have to exit a game, but he cannot be designated hitter. So you have to play him in the field if you want to play him an entire game. Mota and Freed can only get 3 plate appearances or 6 innings, and then they have to exit the game. Those are the Mota, Freed, and Bavacqua rules in play here. So Milwaukee could use this money, the 2 tokens, to improve their team and start adding guys from AAA who are finally starting to pop. The other part of this for Vegas is the understanding, and this is sort of the disappointing part for any team. They have guys that were keepers, but the reality is Tommy Davis is a fading DH who hits like 283 with like no power. So nobody really wants this guy. And Aurelio Rodriguez, as good as he is, his average is awful. He's a slick fielding third baseman, but he'll go on waivers, much like the slick fielding shortstops like Dale Maxwell end up on waivers in a similar thing. And plus, I'm not sure he's even going to be a 1 in those 4 years. He might be a 2 now at third base. They had a choice between waiving him or Ed Brinkman, but they decided to keep Brinkman because he's a 2 at shortstop, and they value that more. So they're going to keep Brinkman. They waive Aurelio Rodriguez. Maybe the Tigers will pick him back up. There you go. All right. Next up here, and this is moving briskly through. The next 2 teams were San Diego and Toronto, and after all the activity early on, and because they had the proper math, they skipped. They actually didn't have anybody significant on the trade block, Ogilvy and Hooton. Brewers might go for Ogilvy later in this process. Hooton, the Dodgers might make a play for, though he might be too expensive. Toronto is a very picky team. So right now, Toronto is not soliciting Hooton. They're waiting for them. They're sitting by the phone waiting for the Dodgers to call them. So San Diego and Toronto pass, which leaves the 8th and final team tonight, Cleveland. Starting at 50301, they get down to 40301 by making 1 trade. They had the luxury of 2 lefty relievers in the keeper bin, Tom Hilgendorf and Ramon Hernandez. You know somebody's going to calling for left-handed pitching. And it was the Pirates, who Ramon Hernandez played for. This is a very interesting situation. Hernandez was on Pittsburgh 2 years ago, had a lousy year. They put him on waivers. Cleveland picked him up. And now Pittsburgh is taking another chance on him. They said, okay, maybe a year away, he'll come back better. So they're going to bring Ramon Hernandez back to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh in this process started at 40301, but they're up to 5 keepers now. Here's the trade. A retiring player for Ramon Hernandez keeper. That's worth a token. So Cleveland gets some money, and the Pirates lose some money there. And the Pirates have 5 keepers, though by the time it's their turn, they're probably going to put Randy Moffett on waivers. They'll have Willie Stargell, Richie Zisk, and then 2 Pirate relievers, Ramon Hernandez and Dave Justy. So they have the rights to Randy Moffett, who's not their property anyway. He was a Giant. So they'll probably either move him to waivers or trade him. But that's for when the Pirates are on the clock later in this process. So we're going to pause right here. You notice the most critical number is the first number, the keepers. Waves and retires sort of just balance out through general accounting. A waiver player can just go to retirement. But you want to have to identify the 4 keepers. If you're in a process and you got 5 keepers, you just, at a certain point, you're going to lose a guy you like. But at least these teams are happy with the 4 guys they plan on keeping in this draft. I mean, it is Otis, Splittorff, Bird. It looks like it is Rojas here. And then it's Modemian, Melendez, Fred Kendall. Unser was traded, so it looks like Bill Bonham might take up the... either Bill Bonham or Ray Burris will take up Fergie Jenkins' spot in the rotation. Singer is now a keeper for Seattle, but Kubiak is not necessarily great. There's still a way of upgrading Kubiak, possibly for Stinson here. And there was no change here, as A-Rod is gone and Bivacqua is there now. And then on Milwaukee, Bivacqua, the rights to Bivacqua are now gone as well. San Diego and Toronto didn't do anything. And Cleveland doesn't have Ramon Hernandez anymore. So these teams, for the moment, are happy with their 8 guys they're going to keep, which is most critical. And there's still some tweaking that could be done. We didn't consider Louis Melendez is not particularly great, but he might be all you can get. Ted Kubiak, I said, isn't that great? He might be all you can get. And that's about all we can do for tonight. It's the first step in this process of 4 steps. There's still some really good transactions potentially to be had. Mickey Rivers going to the Yankees. We have the idea of maybe Bobby Bonds is traded for Bobby Mercer. Bonds to play right field, Rivers to play center, Pinella to play left. And that's a brand new New York Yankee outfield. Bonds might stay in New York until Reggie arrives, is a possibility. But we have, more time to go through all this. So that's it. We're going to do a pause tonight on the Tuesday night off-season look. We'll see you here this time next Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in.